All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our complex numbers with simplifying with square roots. So we are going to simplify when there's a negative in a square root. What happens is when the negative is inside the square root, it becomes an imaginary number. So the square root of -1 is I. So we've all had experience already with i's from Algebra 2, but this is the definition. Okay, so using what we just did with square roots, you're now going to simplify. Again, pay attention. If the negative sign is inside the square root, it's imaginary. If it's outside, that's okay. It's not going to be imaginary. So the square root of -49. The square root of 49 is 7. Because it's -49, it's going to be 7i. Done. Next one, the square root of -32. We know it's going to be 5 plus an imaginary number because it's the negative inside. We're going to break down 32 just like we would a regular square root. 32, the largest possible perfect square that goes into it is 16. So 16 times 2 is 32. And we know the square root of 16 is really 4. So this is going to end up being 5 plus 4i root 2. Number 3, the same rules are going to imply that we just learned from the square roots. So inside with inside, outside with outside. So you could simplify the square root of -20 first, or you could just go ahead and multiply. So if you go ahead and do -15 times 20, you have negative or positive 300. Two negatives make a positive. So we really have the square root of 300. The square root of 300, the largest square that goes into it is 100. So we have 100 times 3. The square root of 100 is really 10. So we end up with 10 root 3. So it is not imaginary anymore. Next one, you can still also do this with variables. So the square root of -72, x to the 5th. So we know it's going to be imaginary because the negative is inside. The largest perfect square that lives in 72 is 36 times 2. The square root of 36 we know is 6. It's an I root 2. Oops, I didn't really leave any room for my x to the 5th. So since it's a square root, we're looking for pairs. So there are 2 pairs. Again, if you want to draw a quick sketch, it's 2 pairs that can be pulled out. So we're going to square that x, and there's still an x that's left over inside. All right, number 5, be careful. Notice the negative sign is outside. So it's not going to be imaginary. We know square root of 8 breaks down into square root 4 times square root 2. The square root of 4 is really 2. So the 2 comes out and the 2 stays in. And it's a negative sign on the outside. For our last one, typically I'd probably just have my students try it. So if you want to pause me and go ahead and try it. But I'll go through the problem. So 75, the largest square root we know is 25 times 3. The square root of 25 is really 5. But we know we're going to take out an I too because it's a negative. So we're going to have 5i. X squared is 1 perfect pair. Y to the 7th is 3 pairs. We're left, the 3 is still inside from here. And we have 1 y left over. And then don't forget we had a -3 in the front. So what should we do with that -3? Multiply it. -3 times 5 is -15. And everything else stays the same. And that is our simplified answer.